Paragraph 7. Those favoring anthropogenic causes have pointed to the large proportion of outbreaks that have been near centers of human populations. In this sentence, have pointed is the main verb. This verb phrase is the main verb. Cause here has been used as a noun. This is not a verb. Cause here is a noun and it means reason. Anthropogenic is the most interesting word here. Anthropogenic means human influenced, human driven, human induced, human related. When we say, for example, anthropogenic causes for pollution, we mean that pollution caused by human driven reasons. And if you aim to take a GRE exam, definitely remember this word because this is a GRE word. The center means that a large proportion of outbreaks have been observed, have been reported near centers of human populations. In this sentence, for adding more fluency to the sentence, we can eliminate this relative pronoun. That here is a relative pronoun. This is actually a relative clause. That is a relative pronoun, and when we eliminate that, we need to turn have here into having into its gerund form. So we can read this sentence as those favoring anthropogenic causes have pointed to the large proportion of outbreaks having been near centers of human populations. Human influence here is in the parentheses. We can remove parentheses here and set off with commas or set off with m dash. They function like parentheses, and by placing parentheses, the other means the other aims to place further explanation within the parentheses for the preceding word, that is anthropogenic. Sentence 2. It has been suggested that coral polyps are the main predators of the starfish larvae. In this sentence, has been suggested, this verb phrase is the main verb. It here is not a common pronoun. It is actually an expletive pronoun. An expletive pronoun like it, like there, does not refer to something in the preceding. Actually, this is a placeholder for what comes after the verb. And what comes after the verb is this clause. And that here actually introduces this independent clause. And this is actually the implicit subject for this sentence, and it holds its place. The pronunciation of this word is polyp. Polyp. Sentence 3. Destruction of coral by blasting and other badland use practices would reduce predation on the starfish larvae and cause a feedback in which increases in acanthaster populations causes still further coral destruction. Would reduce and cause are the main verbs here. Would is the modal verb, and actually we can say reduce. And cause are the main verbs. We don't have a comma before and because after and we don't have a subject for the verb cause, and the subject for the verb cause is here, destruction of coral, which is modified by this adjective clause. blasting, and other bad land use practices. This clause, after feedback, this clause, in which increases in acanthastor populations causes still further coral destruction, is a relative clause. It is actually an adjective clause which modifies further feedback, this noun, feedback. And this is this is a restrictive clause. It has not been set up with comma, and its information is essential to define what the other means with expression of feedback. But what is feedback? Feedback here does not mean response, does not mean opinion on something. It is actually a scientific term. It is actually a more scientific term which has found its way into general English literature. Let me discuss this. Feedback or feedback loop or feedback system is actually a mechanism, a system in which the output of the system is returned as the input of the system, thereby making a loop. And this feedback loop can be positive or negative. For instance, here we see a feedback loop, and if we begin from carbon dioxide increases counterclockwise, we will have warmer atmosphere, then warmer ocean, which leads to less carbon dioxide uptake. And this less carbon dioxide uptake is the output of the system, which is itself leads to increases in carbon dioxide in atmosphere. So this output is itself the input of the system, and since it adds to the system, it adds to carbon dioxide amount in the atmosphere. This is a positive feedback loop. This is an example of a negative feedback loop. The previous one was a positive feedback. In this loop, if we begin from CO2 and move counterclockwise, an increase in CO2 can lead to increase in the temperature of atmosphere, and warmer atmosphere can lead to increase in photosynthesis. You see, our two arrows up to here, up until now, are positive, and photosynthesis is a process which absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So this increase in photosynthesis can adjust the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere and actually moderate the increase in CO2. So this arrow is minus, and this is why we have a negative feedback loop, because the input here, the output here can return into the loop in a negative way. You see, negatively, it actually leaves its negative mark on CO2. And last topic of our feedback subject is the plot of feedback mentioned in paragraph 7. You know, according to paragraph 7, destruction of corals can lead to less starfish eaten, and less starfish eaten can lead to increase in the number of acanthasters. And since acanthasters feed on corals, increasing the number of acanthasters can lead to destruction of corals. This output in this loop can return as the input. So we see that it actually, this loop further adds to destruction of coral. And this is indeed a positive feedback or positive feedback loop. This sentence has two fascinating points in terms of pronunciation. The first one is the pronunciation of this word, When we utilize this word as a verb, we say use. And when we employ this word as a noun, we say use. And here we utilize this word as a noun to modify this word practices. So we say use. And I think the other should have connected land and use with a hyphen between them, because in this sentence they modify practices better when they are connected to each other with a hyphen in combination of each other. The other point regarding pronunciation is the pronunciation of predation, this word. Uh, you know, we previously in previous paragraphs discussed the pronunciation of the word predator. And since predation and predator are cognate, I think it's better to discuss the subtle difference in the pronunciation of these two cognate words. Predation and predator are cognate and they belong to the same family. So, since they have a difference in terms of pronunciation, we should be aware of this difference. And when we use them, we should pay attention to this subtle difference. Again, since this is an important issue, I'll repeat that when we say predation, our stress is upon the letter D. And when we say predator, our stress is upon the letter P. And when we want to pronounce these two words, we should never confuse their pronunciation. And we should pay attention which word we use and where should we place our stress. The last thing about this sentence is this gerund blasting. Blasting is the gerund form of the verb blast. And blast means to explode, to erupt, to gush, to blow up. Please remember this verb because you may encounter it in your TOEFL exam. It's better to know this. The last sentence: unfortunately, there are too few documented instances of physical destruction of coral, being followed by outbreaks of acanthasta for these hypotheses to be fully supported. Here, the main verb is this be verb are. There is actually a placeholder for the subject that is coming after are. It is actually a existential there. The actually adds emphasis to the existence of too few documented instances. It says that just too few documented exists regarding this issue. Being followed by outbreaks of acanthasta is here is a restrictive relative clause. It is actually a participle phrase or participle clause. We can eliminate being here. We can just say there are too few documented instances of physical destruction of coral followed by outbreaks of acanthasta. You can eliminate being. And just pay attention to this point that when you read the sentence, don't look at coral and being as a noun phrase. We don't have something like a coral being. We have a noun phrase like human being. Actually, we use being to refer to species that have high level of sentience and consciousness, like humans, elephants, dolphins, whales, apes, monkeys, but not corals that are plant-like life that don't have that high level of consciousness and sentience. So let me rewrite this sentence in the Word document. Now I can demonstrate to you being is redundant here. You can. This is up to you to incorporate being into your sentence or not. Instead of saying there are too few documented instances of physical destruction of coral being followed by outbreaks. You can say there are too few documented instances of physical destruction of coral followed by outbreaks of acanthaster. You see that we crossed out being here. And as for the being, I mentioned that we have something like human being, and we use being to species that have high level of sentience and consciousness. But saying coral being is not acceptable because coral does not have that much level of uh, consciousness and sentience as humans. Apes, dolphins, elephants, so on. Question 9. Which of the sentences below best expresses the essential information in the highlighted sentence in the passage? So, fortunately, in this question, we have a question mark at the end of the sentence. Thanks God. Incorrect choices change the meaning in important ways or leave out essential information. Okay, let us go back to paragraph 7 and read the highlighted sentence again. This sentence states that destruction of coral can lead to reduction in predation on the starfish larvae, and actually, this process makes a feedback loop, as we discussed when reading this paragraph. And according to this feedback loop, destruction of coral can lead to reduction in prediction on the starfish larvae, and as a result, we have an increase in acanthaster populations, and increase in acanthaster population again help destruct corals. So now we should check the options to reject the incorrect ones and isolate the correct one. It goes without saying that this is our strategy for answering TOEFL questions. The first option, blasting and other bad land use practices would cause the destruction of coral and increase in the number of predators that feed on acanthaster larvae. The first part of this sentence is true. Blasting, and according to the highlighted sentence, blasting and other bad land use practices would cause the destruction of coral. That's true. But we cannot agree with the second part of the sentence, which says this blasting and other bad land use practices increase the number of predators that feed on acanthaster larvae. No, because the highlighted sentence states that as a result of coral destruction, we will witness a decrease in predation on starfish, in predation on acanthaster larvae. So we will not have any increase in the number of predators that feed on acanthester larvae. So this option is rejected. The second option, bad land use practices would reduce predation on acanthester larvae and increase the starfish population, which would cause more coral destruction. There are some fine relationships, some subtle links between concepts in this highlighted sentence. This as a result of bad land use practices, we have destruction of coral, and destruction of coral leads to reduction in predation on the starfish larvae. And as a result of this reduction in predation, we have an increase in the number of acanthester larvae, actually, an increase in acanthester populations. And this acanthester populations again contribute to destroying corals because they feed on corals. And this way, thereby, we have a loop. So we should pay attention to direct link between concepts. Actually, this is the destruction of coral can lead to the reduction in predation on the starfish larvae, not bad land use practices. As actually bad land use practices leads to a destruction of coral, and this is destruction of coral, as I just mentioned, that leads to a reduction in the number of starfish larvae predators. So, according to what we discussed, the first part of this class is not true. Bad land use practices leads to coral destruction, and coral destruction would reduce predation on acanthester larvae. So this is not a good subject for what happens in the following. However, the second part of the sentence, I mean after and part here, this part, is true. This is the same part that the other refers to in the highlighted sentence as the feedback, or better, feedback loop. This part makes a loop. Therefore, we reject the second option and we go for the third one. A reduction of bad land use practices would reduce coral destruction by increasing the survival of acanthester larvae and their predators. Again, to explore this option, we need to actually probe the subtle relationship between concepts in that highlighted sentence. We know that there is a relationship between land use practices, bad land use practices, and coral destruction. An increase in bad land use practices can lead to increase in coral destruction. There is a direct link between them, and decreasing bad land use practices can lead to a decrease in coral destruction. But this sentence, this option actually states that as a result of reduction of bad land use practices, we will have an increase in the survival of acanthester larvae and their predators, and this increase in the survival of acanthester larvae and their predators leads to a reduction in coral destruction. But this simultaneous increase in the survival of acanthester larvae, both acanthester larvae and their predators, is problematic. Since, according to the highlighted sentence, as a result of reduction in predation on the starfish larvae, or equally reduction in the number of predators feeding on the starfish larvae, we have an increase in the number of acanthaster larvae or acanthaster populations. So we see that we don't have any simultaneity between increasing the number of acanthaster populations and increase in the number of their predators. So this is not reasonable according to this highlighted sentence. And according to this highlighted sentence, there is a one-way relationship between reduction in predation on the starfish larvae and increase in acanthaster populations. Therefore, we reject option 3. And now that we have rejected 3 options, it seems that the last option is the answer to this question. So, in order to make sure about this conclusion, we explored this option. The destruction of coral through land use activities would cause a decrease in the number of predators that feed on acanthaster larvae. This sentence states that as a result of land use activities, we have destruction of coral, and this destruction of coral would cause a decrease in the number of predators that feed on acanthaster larvae. This sentence is the paraphrase of this sentence in the highlighted sentence. This class destruction of coral by blasting and other bad land use practices would reduce predation on the starfish larvae. This is actually exactly the paraphrase of this clause. So we have found the answer. We have settled for the answer for this question.